This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining with your regular host, Greg Thompson, and our official crossover edition with our very own Kevin and Jason show host, Kevin Massara. How are we doing?
Living the dream, Greg. What a day. What a fantastic day to be alive.
It's been crazy. I can't lie. I wasn't quite as calm as what Aaron was. Every single announcement that was coming out, Aaron was like, "Meh, not a big surprise." And then one hit that I'm pretty sure nobody had. But before we jump into all the fun, make sure you guys come check us out at cover1.net. Got a lot of great things going on there. Awesome video breakdowns coming from Eric. Great updates from Rob Quinn and from Fernando. Our draft work going on from Russell and Christian. Just awesome stuff coming out all the time. We've got both Buffalo podcasts going now with the Cover One Buffalo and the Kevin and Jason show. So just all kinds of great stuff going on. And my favorite is the premium channel Slack. Come on in. You get to join our shows live as we do them on Zoom. You're able to jump in and chat with us while we're doing it. You're able to join us in the podcast, in the premium Slack channel going back and forth. Today was like a contest for every immediate breaking news that was out there from any source, people trying to post things as fast as possible. Just a great community and a lot of fun, and game days even better. So when you have a minute, come on over and check us out. Before we jump into it, Kevin, where can the people find you out on the Twitter sphere?
For sure. Most of you can find me and know I'm at Kevin Massari, just like my name, KevinMassare, and our other handle at Kevin Jason Show. That'll be generally ran by Jason, as my Twitter feed is tough to keep up with alone. So he does his through our main site there. And obviously you can find me on Cover One right there as one of the hosts of the Kevin and Jason Show. So follow along. I'm sorry you'll occasionally, anyone that doesn't, get occasional Yankees tweets. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about that. And occasional UB stuff. But other than that, I'm probably 90% Bills.
I respect it. And I'm there, and I got to let everybody know it's worth it following along.
Perfect.
So, Kevin, I mean, there's no sense starting anywhere else. What were your first thoughts when the news came across that the Buffalo Bills have officially released LeSean McCoy? I
was shocked because I get stuck into it. I think I listened too much to GMs and head coaches and ownership, and I got caught. It happens to me not just with the Bills, like with UB. They had a head coach, Nate Oates, really wanted by Alabama, said for months that he was going to stay, leaves right to my face. So ever since I thought I was going to be a little bit more ready for more different communications with GMs and coaches. And I really thought that the cap number, they weren't really worried about the cap portion of this. That he would bring enough with his certain skill set and his receiving ability, which obviously we ended up seeing from Singletary throughout preseason, that he would do enough to stay and that they would want him as a leadership piece and a recruiter. Look, he got brought in Frank Gore. So I thought he was fairly safe. I didn't think there's any chance we see him next year. I thought it was just even on a good deal. I thought it was one and done here, but I was shocked. I would say that I believed even the local media guys like Matt Fairburns and all of the other guys were basically quoting, all of Bean's quotes the last couple of weeks or months about what he had to say about LeSean McCoy. So honestly, Greg, I was shocked more. I think there's other people that might not have been at all. I was a little bit thinking that I thought he was in their plans to at least be a rotational guy and first down guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth here. So the one piece of it, I think there's plenty of hindsight, geniuses now that say they knew the whole time. They didn't. No one knew this the whole time. Every single beat writer, every single person closest to the team had them in their 53-man projections. All of us, everyone who's connected to the team or follows them, had talked about the possibility that, hey, anybody's available for the right price, and that I'm pretty sure everybody felt like if they got the right price, Shady was movable. He wasn't in the list of captains in the Detroit game. He wasn't in the Veterans Council that was out there that was reported. There were some signs that you could tell it wasn't quite the same as it was last year. And now in hindsight, I'm going to say, very clearly that now it's easy to see this was purely the plan the whole time. Brandon Beane was going to say the right things to posture and keep the perception of trade value as high as possible, be able to talk up the fact that LeSean McCoy is our number one guy, totally there, really excited about what he has to offer, still has plenty of juice left, and was saying all the right things until the very last minute where he had no choice and now had to make the move. Now, in my own personal space, I think he was worth keeping, and that I didn't really care about the $6.4 million to be able to do that. So I respect their decisions. I can't praise all the rest of them and say that I trust the process and then nitpick and say, well, I'm not going to trust you on this one. So, I thought he still had some juice left. I thought that a ton of this was the fact that it was the offensive line last year, the lack of weapons, the development from Josh Allen. And I thought that any running back from last year to this year is in a better position to perform, and that he would be one of those. So it's easy to say in hindsight, but anybody saying, oh, I called this all along. No, you didn't. There was no way that anybody had this spot on, and that this was a surprise to just about anybody.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, it was absolutely, I will never beat the horn of that I had this. And this is coming from a guy who looks at things at purely financial, rollovers, things like that. I was on the rollover amount. That's the first thing I thought of, not even this year's cap number, what they're going to carry into next year. And it's looking to, based on what stat source you use, I've seen between 85 and 93 million, depending on, they're all a little different. And then the NFL is different than everyone else's. So it's going to be about that, depending on what escalators and bonuses are received by these guys who have different bonuses throughout game played, touchdowns, et cetera. That always changes at a good 5 million, but we don't know those. So at this point, it is pretty sure they're going to have about $90 million due to this. And the one thing you got to remember is you don't just save the $6 million this year, which isn't, you save it on your cap, but then you can roll that entire amount over. So say you go and trade for a Melvin Gordon at 15 million, just whatever. It's really, you're wasting the 15 million this year, and then the next 15 that will be on the books for next year. So it's really a $30 million deal in a way, when you would have had that cap space by rolling it over. So that's the argument against why you wouldn't go out and spend that money this year. But a lot of people will say, what are you going to do with 90 million? You had that this year. You have 30 million left for a reason. And the same thing can be said next year. But I look at these financially, but even I was like, you know what? They have a ton of money. There's no reason to make a move from this guy. He brings a lot to the table. I think he was showing some agility and some spry in that third preseason game. I really didn't see any need to move on from him. But what was really, I think the final point and the shocking point was, they've turned Bodine into a 6. They've turned Teller into a 5 and a 6. Did they really not have anything that they could do with him, or was it honestly kind of like a respect thing where like, you know what, we want the agents to know that the 6th round pick, we've already accumulated a few on a premier player or a marquee guy. We're not going to milk it for a 6 so that, we don't waste those relationships with agents or high powered agents. Does he have Rosenhaus, by the way? I don't know.
He is.
Okay. So I didn't know if he had moved on from him with his stuff that happened, but so I think that having that relationship. So I don't know what the fact or seriously wasn't tradable due to his, because these Bills would have still eaten that dead cap. He would have still had $6 million that the team would have had to just pay the difference. Obviously, they wouldn't have paid the signing bonus on their cap. So they would have taken 1 year 6 and vested. Greg, is that just enough to not? Because what do you think he's going to sign for? 1 for 3? Yeah. What do you think he gets?
Yeah, I think you're pretty close there. I think that I had projected earlier probably 3 million with some escalators up to 5, that kind of ballpark, or maybe even a little bit lower in the initial guarantee. But I think that Bean had that price tag. So there was a number that he would have done it for. I don't know if it got to the point where literally it was a future conditional 7th and he just didn't want to be a jerk about it and have it look like that. So I don't know. I have a feeling that anything a 5th or better would have done it. I even kind of think that a current year 6th, maybe not a 2026 would have been worth it. If it was a 2021 6th or later, maybe that was enough to be able to make it that we'd rather keep the relationship equity and the perception among agents and other veteran players that there probably is a line somewhere there where that matters. But he didn't do this the entire time and posture that whole time just to let him walk away on goodwill. So there absolutely was a price tag that if somebody met it, they were going to trade him. So whatever it was, wherever that number was, my guess is that it's somewhere there around a current year 6th versus a future 6th or any kind of 7th. That's my guess.
Right.
That ballpark, that price tag wasn't met. And for the right reasons you just said, and the acquiring team would have taken on $6.4 million. in this year vested salary that would have been guaranteed as soon as he made the 53-man roster, and that no team was willing to take that on and give up an asset. There might have been a team who might have taken it on for free, and if that was an option, but there's no team that was going to take that on and give up an asset. So I think that the respect for Shady that was shown was at least at some point outweighed the minimal compensation they were offered. So, what is your best guess? I threw out there that now that Carlos Hyde's been traded from Kansas City, that's a possibility. Now that Melvin Gordon's been given the right to negotiate with other teams, I think Anthony Lynn and the Chargers are there. Those are my top two, with Anthony Lynn and Andy Reid. Some people mention Tampa Bay. Everybody thinks Philly, but they're well overstocked at running back. Houston just traded for Carlos Hyde, so I'm going to guess not them. But any other, and it sounds like Zeke is back in the fold with Dallas. So my guess is it's a battle between either Kansas City or the Chargers.
Yeah, I thought Chargers off the bat, just that Lynn already had commented on it. And I think I'm going to go with the Chargers, but Kansas City just got a lot more intriguing. Why did they make a move right before I guess there's no deadline, but right before the deadline to cut your player? So effectively by doing it before 4, you have to cut another player. So I think that shows that Kansas City got to keep a player at a different position because obviously they traded away, Hyde. So I think that that's enough to show that I don't like who's behind Damian Williams there. Maybe they do. I think that there may be some news that LeSean McCoy could come in and be like, look, you have Damian Williams and that's it. I think that could be a selling point there. Chargers could technically do the same, but they still have a couple of guys I like there.
Both Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson are better than who the backups are there.
Absolutely.
And as a completely impartial, objective, current fantasy owner of LeSean McCoy, I would just be heartbroken if he ended up in Kansas City. That would just be terrible. So we'll see where it goes. But let's work our way down the roster a little bit here.
Sure.
I think that, we'll do some of the easy ones to get them out of the way. Quarterback, no surprise. We saw, Allen and Barkley obviously were already safe. Tyree Jackson was released, and I think that many people think he's in the target range for for a quarterback. I'm going to skip over running back for a minute. Some of the defensive ones were easy. We saw everything happen with the defensive ends, Murphy, Daryl Johnson, Jerry Hughes, Shaq Lawson, Starr, Oliver, Harrison, and Jordan Phillips. Everybody good there. We saw a couple surprises later on. So I guess that those are the only real easy ones. At running back. So obviously we already said LeSean McCoy, Frank Gore, Devin Singletary, TJ Yeldon, Patrick DeMarco, all 4 were in street clothes. So we kind of knew that going in. The one that we weren't sure about was, Sonoris Perry was still there. And that was just announced that he was released with a injury settlement, meaning that he's potentially eligible to come back for another team. But with the timing of his injury settlement time period plus the 3 weeks, that's very likely meaning it's not going to be back with the Bills. And Christian Wade technically was not released or waived yet that we've seen. So any surprises with the 4 that made it? Gore, Singletary, Yeldon is the backfield, DeMarco is the fullback, and what would you give a percentage of that is actually possible Wade made this real roster?
To say it's not growing would be lying if you were, the gambling odds, and 50-50.
That's a little high for me, but I can't say it's 0. I
Right.
just can't. We've gone this long with no announcement yet that I think the guys that we still see out there, like a Cam Phillips, like a David Sills, like a Christian Wade, some of those players are the guys that the Bills want to sneak through waivers and didn't want to give any extra time to be able to figure out who is going to be there. So I still don't think it's that realistic, but he still hasn't been announced. So it is absolutely in play. And we'll get through some of the math here of what's been announced, especially now. We'll move on to tight end. We'll do that one next. It's now been reported Tyler Kroft is going to make the active game day 53. He may not be on he's going to make the 53. He may not be on the game day 46 week 1, but he is going to be on the 53. Dawson Knox, Lee Smith, Tommy Sweeney were locks. Tommy Sweeney's mustache made him ineligible to cut. You just can't lose that kind of value. And now the one sneaky part that came out there was it was announced earlier that there was kind of a cryptic message on the release of Kurt Coleman that, hey, he's been released, but fans may want to be careful. He may be back pretty quickly here because of some other roster moves. And I had speculated at the time that maybe that meant some shenanigans with Voshon Joseph IR designation. And it turns out, I think I was right about the shenanigans with the IR designation, but it was Jason Kroom. It's now been reported that Jason Kroom is going to make the active 53. He is then going to be placed on IR tomorrow. That will move him off of the active 53, make him eligible to return after week 8, and that Kurt Coleman will be brought back on there. So it looks like week 1, we are going to have 4 tight ends on the roster and 3 for game day with Knox, Dawson Knox, Lee Smith, and Tommy Sweeney, and then Tyler Kroft apparently in their plans week 2, week 3-ish.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we were onto it. I think we were initially talking about it on someone's post. Who was it that had posted? We were talking about it on a conversation piece about what the Bills could be trying to do with this weird. They just need to change it, Greg, to where if you're on IR, you can come back. I mean, it's silly. It's silly. It's a silly thing. It's just like the vested veterans are silly.
I would say those are both items that are for sure going to be in this next CBA.
Yeah.
You're up for debate in the CBA.
Yeah.
I mean.
Okay, yeah, definitely at least up for debate. I think it's silly to the fact where you shouldn't – I mean, it's bad for veterans because those are the guys you're going to play around with. You're not going to expose someone to waivers. So I think it's a bad for veteran move to – I just don't see why you need to – if you go on IR at any point, it should just be the week you have to sit out, and that's how it should be. I don't know why you need to make – I don't know.
What's the difference between Jason Kroom and Lader and Waddle? What is the difference in that they were both signed and on the roster the whole time, did all their work, were on the team the entire time, both were put on IR pretty early, but just because of an arbitrary designation, Lader and Waddle's not eligible to return, but Jason Kroom's going to be eligible to return. You don't think they could do this same thing with Julian Stanford and pull him aside like they did Kurt Coleman and say, hey, we technically got to release you for a minute here, but we'll give you an extra $50,000 if you let us release you for a minute and then bring you back on Tuesday because we want to technically put Lader and Waddle on the roster and then hide him to be able to come back.
And Dodson, they just placed on an NFL inactive list, by the way. So I did want to note that they put him on from the commissioner's exempt list from the spring incident. So I did want to point that out. That just happened. So there's that. So that's
one spot. That is one spot that is out there now for. I know we're going through position by position. So for anybody listening tomorrow or later on in the audio, we're doing this live to get the best information we can to you. But that is now one spot that goes to, or actually I take that back, 2 spots between Christian Wade, David Sills, Cam Phillips, Ike Botker, Connor McDermott. 2 of those guys are making this roster. So it's either 10 offensive linemen or we're getting a surprise at running back or receiver.
Yep. And someone asked, what does that mean? I mean, it means that he did something legally or ethically, whatever word you want to use. And while it's being investigated, he's able to go to a list that doesn't count against your roster. So he's going to be placed on that. That gets figured out. He gets his suspension, sometimes time served, sometimes it's longer. So he'll be on that list until they figure out whatever that incident happened in the spring. And they go through all those legal proceedings and the NFL rules on it. So he sits on that kind of like Tyreek Hill did, or other players that have sat on this list before. So he'll sit on that, not counting against a roster. And then once that's deemed that he can come back and play, they have to make clear a roster spot for him, cut him or waive him. So that would make sense to where that spot's freed up when those ruling comes down to the NFL knows what he did or their suspension amount comes out. Those have to make their determination. If it's longer than time served, what to do with that player. Generally, I think he was going to the practice squad, so that would make sense why we didn't hear he was waived. So the Bills are able to sit on him, though. I'm not ever want anyone on this list for bad reasons, but they're able to sit on this player and make a determination maybe down the road here. So I think they've always done 6 linebackers, Greg, and I know they're a little bit deep in the back end of it. I think they might follow suit with that 6 linebackers.
Yeah, well, with this news, I think it's very apparent that that's the path they're going. And use some of the flexibility there is what's the difference between a extra linebacker versus what Saran Neal's role is? What is a Maurice Alexander? Some of those different when Kurt Coleman comes back, how much of them are a safety versus a nickel linebacker. It's that same kind of idea. So, with Dotson in that position, he doesn't count against 53. They'll deal with that when it comes across, which may be later this week or 2 months from now. I think that is an indefinite time period based on whatever investigation is taking place. So that takes him out of play for the moment here. And I will say the guys that I rattled off here that we don't have resolution on, Christian Wade, David Sills, Cam Phillips, Ike Botger, and Connor McDermott, are all 5 practice squad eligible. All 5 that they have a vested interest in probably having all 5 of them on the organizational list here going forward, whether that's the active roster or the practice squad. And I will also say there's a very good chance that 1 of them, 2 of them could make the 53 tonight and then find out tomorrow afternoon at 4:00 that they've been moved off of that on the practice squad because they claimed someone from another roster, especially at a offensive tackle or a cornerback position. So we're going to get a surprise here. Someone that we did not expect, either a 10th lineman, David Sills, Cam Phillips, or Christian Wade, are going to make this roster and then be able to go elsewhere to be able to.
Where are we at to this moment, Greg? Do you know the number? I know who we're waiting on, but how many can make it out of them? Is it 2?
I have it at 51 right now,
so
and that removes Terrell Dotson, counting Voshon Joseph on IR, counting Kurt Coleman is released and swapping in for Kroom. I have 5 guys for 2 spots. Christian Wade, David Sills, Cam Phillips, Ike Botker, and Kyle McDermott.
So right there, your Wade odds are 40% just out of pure fallout equal.
Yeah. It is kind of hard to argue that.
But he might have a little lower of a chance than the other, some of the names there. So maybe it isn't all equal there.
Yeah, if you had to ask me my gut, I think that the kind of thing that Cam Phillips showed is the kind of thing that you would have a McDermott say, that's the kind of guy I want to show, get the right message, and then tomorrow you're going to let him know that he didn't actually make the team. Right. I'm going to move him on to practice squad. But, hey, here's a nod to you for the great work that you put in.
The only thing about receiver, Greg, that I want to ask you about, they're already targeting Duke Williams and Ray McCloud. Do you throw a third now? David Sills is probably, say he doesn't make the roster, is there too? Like Sills and Phillips are not only 1 roster spot potentially, but you're not going to roster 7 receivers and then 4 practice squad receivers. So what, like, you see what I'm saying? So what do you do?
I think that the only reason you would consider that is because some of the other obvious practice squad guys are now off the table. Mike Love was going to be a practice squad guy. He's now IR. Voshon Joseph was going to be in that mix. He's now IR. Terrell Dotson was going to be in that mix. He's now on the exempt list. So on defense, you've got Cam Lewis, Abraham Wallace, maybe Deion Lacey, it sounds like, if he doesn't sign elsewhere. On offense, if they're talking about right now, we're debating either 9 or 10 linemen, plus they traded away Teller. So, and they had injury designations for other people. So maybe Jerron James, maybe DeAndre Wesley, maybe the loser out of the Botker McDermott thing. So maybe 1 or 2 there.
Right.
Then you get into, does Tyree Jackson count? I don't think Murphy is a candidate. Perry is not a candidate. If Wade makes it, they have the option of the 10th spot or the 11th exemption. I think getting to this point, it seems more likely than not that he would be in the legit 10-man versus the exemption, but that's still technically in play. We'll see where that goes. So there are enough spots where you could do a third just because of some of the other guys now on IR designation that you could have a third. 4 probably seems heavy for both, for all 4 of Ray, Duke, David Sills, and Cam Phillips to all make it. That's heavy, but I don't think it's out of the question for 3.
Yeah, I think I'm at 3 too, but I don't know if what I haven't wrapped my head around is I'm at 3 with 6 receivers or 3 with 7. I got to kind of wrap my head around exactly, because that will matter. If they're carrying an extra receiver, I think that obviously it might reduce it down to 2 in the practice squad just because they're using a 7th receiver spot. So absolutely. I think it's interesting. You're right, though. Phillips is a candidate for that. You made the initial 53, maybe even Sills too. You made the initial 53. But
yeah, just the nod to that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that McDermott would do. Sadly, it's not crazy for that to happen to Dean Marlowe. That Dean Marlowe could make the initial 53. Yes, he did. He made the initial 53 and then got waived when we picked up Ryan Lewis. Maybe I don't remember if that was the exact name, but it was in that phase where all of a sudden we grabbed Lewis and Bajorquez and somebody else, and that he was one of those guys who made the initial 53, then got cut. But I think that's the same thing. You could have Captain Munnerlyn come back quickly. You could have, we already have it reported that Voshon Joseph is going to come back. So any of those kind of things, I think we'll have those kind of moves out there as they happen. But let's move on to the offensive line. I think that we're still waiting on a couple finalized pieces. There wasn't a ton of drama there. We had Deion Dawkins, Spain, Morris, Ford, and Secchi, Spencer Long, and Feliciano. Those 7 were rock solid. It sounded like Bates was pretty close, and we got that confirmed. Ryan Bates is going to be the 8th lineman. We have no news yet on Ike Botker and Connor McDermott. So, one, what are your thoughts on Ryan Bates? And then do you think we're going to go with 8, 9, or 10?
Okay, so the offensive line's interesting because we went from one of the worst offensive lines we've got to see to trading 2 players. Drama, I guess, was there yesterday. We traded 2 interior linemen for a 5, 6, and a 6.
The 2 of them started about 16 games last year between the 2 of them.
So there you go. That they can't make our roster, and we turned them into assets in the interior offensive line. So that's an interesting piece to note that's what you had enough depth there to turn that. And that's after losing Waddell. Obviously he's a tackle, but he was another depth piece there. Trading for Ryan Bates, I think that's a good move. I like that he can play pretty much any position. They clearly love the guy. Pretty much pick up the phone and said, what depth player on our roster do you want? For some reason, they picked someone they cut. I'm sure we were pretty flexible with maybe guys 60 to 90, maybe we weren't, but I'm assuming the Bills are flexible with, is there a guy you want? They chose him. So I thought that was a great value, and they clearly loved him from day one. I don't know what happened. He was an undrafted free agent to get traded at that point was weird. Maybe the Bills didn't have, I know there's weird, what was not talked about a lot. There's a weird undrafted free agent money bonuses that you're capped at. And
look at the video, the embedded video where they showed all the drama around Sills. It's just as likely that we had that exact same conversation with Bates and he just picked Philly. Right. Because of being at Penn State, being close there, might have been a fan of them growing up, all those kind of different things. It's now being reported that Bates is officially posted on his, that he made the team. But that kind of thing where we could have been going down that same path, really, really wanted Ryan Bates, and we just didn't get him like we got Sills. And now all of a sudden it was like, hey, if you guys – and again, he signed with Philly, who was incredibly deep at offensive tackle, and that he was like, hey, if I don't have a chance here, let me get a chance somewhere else. Bean called him up, and now it's being reported Jeff Holland has also been officially released, which technically was a name out there that I wasn't genuinely considering.
What about Yarbrough, real quickly? We haven't seen anything on him, right? Speaking of D-end.
That's a good question. I don't know if I have officially seen.
Kind of already assumed he was gone because we were all in on the Love and the Johnson thing. But that's not far-fetched to see him take a spot here, right? Couldn't be a 6th name for the 2 spots?
No, I think you're spot on. I think that is technically a name. We'll have to go through and research that. I don't show his name officially checked off.
Right. So, Cam Phillips, Sills, Butker, McDermott, Yarbrough, and McLaughlin. I guess McLaughlin, he's another one. We talked about him on our show.
Yeah. He's definitely one. You saw some of the other people. The freaking kicker that the Vikings gave up a 5th-round kick for Vari Kedrick got released after 3 weeks, and they just gave up a 5th-round pick for him. So there's some wacky stuff going on still.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can still. I don't know. You could have made the initial 53 and get traded, and someone else gets cut. So there's, like you said, just like you can get cut for a new guy tomorrow, like the Phillips thing we were talking about. Same with McLaughlin, could get. Make the initial 53 just with trade processes or whatever.
There's still plenty of stuff out there. Let's move on to the defensive line here. Again, now officially we have Eddie as the last one out there to confirm. We'll kind of work through that. Being able to go through, we just got the final news that Jeff Holland has been released. So Sam Acho was confirmed earlier. Roderick Young, Kyle Pecco, Latarius Walton all had some flashes here or there. Wish them all the best, but they're out as well. So our top 8's been pretty firm for a while here. Trent Murphy, Jerry Hughes going to start at defensive end, backed up by Shaq and Daryl Johnson. Star Latule and Ed Oliver are going to start at D tackle. Harrison and Jordan Phillips going to back them up. Mike Love on the IR, so potential to have him back next year. He'll receive some solid pay being on the IR for the year. And then once we get the confirmation for Eddie Yarbrough being in the running of those final lists, if we get a fifth defensive end as another name to keep track of. Any surprises there? Anything that seemed to be one of the safest position groups on the roster?
Yeah, with the news of Love's the IR, I mean, it was a done deal. Yarbrough has played well enough now at the latter stages of preseason to earn a fifth. I wouldn't give it to him. I think they're so deep there that at the ninth guy, he's going to be inactive. At least I think he'll still be available. Have an injury comes at the defensive end spot. I think that's the 8. And I guess we got off track because of the DN Holland news, but I had 8 offensive linemen this whole time. I think Bates has enough versatility to do that, to save the roster spots. But I know they like Ike Butker a lot. They were sad they lost him in the whole cut claim thing last year to KC, and then claimed him right away the second KC cut him. Wouldn't be shocked to see him make it. I don't like McDermott at all. I don't see anything from him. I don't think he's got tackle play. You could argue he could still develop, but I think he's had enough time to do that. I think throw him on the practice squad if you really want to keep working with him. Don't use a roster spot on him. So Botker wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't put him on, and Yarbrough back to the end. Yarbrough wouldn't, but I wouldn't keep either of them at this point because I think I like numbers elsewhere. But other than that, D line's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm the same. I like the flexibility the 8 offensive linemen give you, but I know they like Ike Botker. I'm the same on Connor McDermott. He's now been around the roster for 2 years, and if you haven't seen enough that he's ready to do that now, I just think you need to be ready to move forward. I don't know that he's all of a sudden going to become that, but they don't have that obvious tackle. I do think that's absolutely one of the spots they could be in the market for. We'll get to another one here in a little bit, but I think that you brought that up on Twitter earlier. I think that O tackle and then another spot we'll get to are the two that have the highest likelihood of claiming a player. So I think I would keep an eye out for, even if Botker or McDermott make it as a 9th lineman, or oddly a 10th. I don't know that that's really in play. That 9th or 10th guy could easily be replaced with a claim. So we'll see where that goes, but I think that that's technically where the list is going to be at.
Absolutely.
Let's move into linebacker. We've had some surprise here. There were a lot of stands for Deion Lacey, people excited about him. I thought that he did flash and showed some potential, but I did warn people that a lot of that flash was against 3rd and 4th stringers late in the game, a lot of 4th quarter pop plays where he is better than those players, and he was only playing then because of the depth that we added. Zoe, Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano were obvious. Corey Thompson and Julian Stanford I thought were fairly obvious, but there were some moves that surprised people. Mo Alexander I did think was kind of on the borderline there, so that's one that makes a little bit more sense now that it's there, but I think he was kind of in the running. The IR move of O'Shawn Joseph really cleared that up, and now finding out that Terrell Dodson is going to be on the exempt list and having to kind of battle there. We'll see where that goes. So any surprises there? I know you were a fan of Lacey at points, but I thought the linebacker shook out fairly normal, and now it does look like we're going to be closer to 6.
And I watched a little film on Lacey because I thought he makes flash plays, and he makes a lot of he's a lot better, obviously on teams, but he's a lot better against the run. He struggles in pass protection to the point, even against 3rd teamers on Thursday, where I just seriously don't want him on the field. He played a little bit last year too, and it was a big downgrade. So unfortunately, would I rather have him than a Snorris Perry at special teams? Yeah, probably. I think Lacey presents more at his position group than Snorris Perry does at the running back position group. So I'm not shocked at anything here. I only want to use 6 on this linebacker. I like these 6. I don't, once again, just like we just said on D-line, I don't know what the 7th, outside of O'Shawn, I don't know what the purpose of a 7th linebacker. They've kept 6. This regime's kept 6. Most, beside the end of the year roster moves they might make, they generally keep 6 and make 6 at cutdown day, and at least for the first section of the year, they keep 6 linebackers, and that's all they need. They play special teams, other positions at special teams a lot. And I mean, I think they have some really good names there. It's pretty deep. I'm cool with it. You could tell how much you liked Alexander. I thought he played well. He had that one overturned pass interference play, like one of the 6 overturned out of the 100 that they reviewed for pass interferences, defensive pass interference reviews. So, but I thought he made a great play on that ball. I thought it was marginal pass interference call, and showed right there more pass coverage than Lacey has to me in his time here. So.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting to see where and I had kind of thrown out that conspiracy idea that if Voshon hadn't have gone on the IR, that he would have been technically the 7th 53-man roster, and that you would have basically, active roster redshirted him, and he just wouldn't have been on the active game day 46, but it would give you 6 game day linebackers to play with, and then you hide him. So now that he went on IR, I don't think it's realistic. I don't think that 7 linebackers make sense as a principle. I just thought it was kind of an avenue to keep Voshon without having to activate him. So now with that news, I don't think that it terribly makes sense to go that route. And I like Lacey. I thought he did well, but I think that both Corey Thompson and Julian Stanford are legitimately better scrimmage linebackers than he is. And then it came down to Deion Lacey was the incumbent special teams guy, and Mo Alexander was the one that the new special teams coordinator handpicked. So I thought that was an uphill battle for him the whole time. He did flash enough that it was probably a debate, but he just, you got beat out by the guy that your new coordinator handpicked. And I think that was pretty cut and dry.
Yep, I agree.
All right, moving into cornerbacks, had a little bit of surprise here. This one, besides obviously LeSean McCoy was obviously the biggest surprise. The fact that neither Captain Munnerlyn nor Lafayette Pitts made the roster was a little bit of surprise for me. So, the obvious ones, Trey White, Levi Wallace, Taron Johnson, Kevin Johnson were never a question. I didn't think Saran Neal was ever a question. I will say some fans, and some beat reporters thought that because he was playing so much into the 4th preseason game and some late play in the 3rd game that maybe he was more in question than what was assumed. I thought he was pretty safe, but now that's been firmed up. So we have 5 cornerbacks firmly there, but Saran Neal is kind of a cornerback in name. He can also play safety. He's also kind of a big nickel linebacker kind of look. So I did expect there to be one of Captain Munnerlyn or Lafayette Pitts to make the roster. When all 3 of those 2 plus Cam Lewis were all released, I was a little bit surprised. What did you think about the moves at corner? And then I know you made some comments about that on Twitter of potential other names.
Yeah, so it was always my dark horse position of there were some really talented young players that got cut at today and yesterday. So I was a little less shocked, but I was shocked they just went and cut all of the bubble guys at cornerback. Maybe I thought they might like a Ryan Lewis or Cam Lewis could have snuck on. I think they're both I think are named for the practice squad that will end up being there. So I would just think they said, you know what, we have 5. Saran Neal can do enough other things to make the roster. I'm convinced they make a move here, that they go out and sign one, but 5 safeties when they were playing Marlowe in a big nickel role in the 4th preseason game. I still think he's a nice placeholder for a claim, but maybe he's not this year finally. So the 5 safeties can kind of tweak it a little bit. But I think that they'll make a move. There's some interesting young names. If they wanted the vet, they had him in Captain Munnerlyn, and I thought he showed enough to make the roster if they were looking for the vet guy. So maybe they're looking for more of a developmental Ryan Lewis type of player, Tease Tabor, maybe another cornerback out there. There's a couple interesting names, and we'll be able to go through those once official lists are out everywhere, and maybe bring some names on one of our shows going forward. But I was not shocked that they didn't keep those guys, more shocked that none of them made it. As a whole group. So I think they're fine with 5. They're fine going week 1 with 5, but I think they'll be pretty active on the waiver wire looking at it like Burkhorn.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. I'll be surprised if they don't poke around, although I will say I'll be surprised if they go beyond 10 DBs. So when you add in Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Jaquan Johnson, those 3 are rock solid. And then right now it looks like both Dean Marlowe and Kurt Coleman, that's 5 safeties and 5 corners. I do think that if they go that route, you have the youth on the practice squad already, assuming they get them, that you can add Cam Lewis, Lafayette Pitts, and Abraham Wallace all to the practice squad.
Right.
Having those guys there, I think Cam Lewis and Ryan Lewis there is enough to be able to do that. I think Captain Munnerlyn's the kind of guy that you can just have on speed dial and let him know, hey, if we get an unexpected injury, we'll call you up in week 4. Keep yourself ready. And that if they are to claim a cornerback, I do think it would be at the cost of either Dean Marlowe or Kurt Coleman, right, and that it would keep it within the 10 DBs, especially when you consider that with whatever you want to label Mo Alexander, whatever you want to label Saran Neal, they have 7 guys who can play safety and have safety experience. So that's a lot of versatility there already. I'd be surprised if they added a corner to that versus swap them out for one of those guys. So we'll kind of see where that shakes out and what the opportunities there are. But, on defense with Voshon Joseph on IR, Terrell Dodson on the exempt list. I actually think if Terrell Dodson gets removed from the exempt list, it's more likely he would go on the practice squad than he would onto the active roster. They already mentioned Deion Lacey is going to be pursued for the practice squad. I think Cam Lewis is an obvious one. It was reported by Marcel Louis-Jacques that Ryan Lewis will be pursued for practice squad and that Abraham Wallace will be pursued. So that's 4 to 5 guys that you could look at on the defensive side of the ball, being able to, review what their options are from a practice squad standpoint. I think if they go after somebody there, I'd be surprised if it's not a corner to replace a safety versus adding to it or at the cost of a practice squad spot.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I think you're right about that. Not if there's a move at corner, I think it would come at the expense of Marlowe personally. So yeah,
I agree. And it's sad. I mean, he's the kind of guy that, that I'm hopeful isn't a, just kind of jerked around back and forth. But unfortunately, that's his lot in life. He's paid well to practice football and to be available when they need him. And he has had plenty of run and has shown that he can jump in, when he's there. But he's just not quite to the level where he's going to be able to completely lock up a roster spot. And that may be a shame. But it's unfortunately, that's kind of the lot he has to be able to review this. So, let's go into one more area, the specialists, that right now we actually haven't heard anything on Chase McLaughlin, that he hasn't officially been released, which is kind of odd. Stephen Hauschka obviously got the extension, so he's rock solid there. Corey Bojorquez, we haven't heard anything about him being released, but now with Ryan Allen on the market and adding in that Britton Colquitt has been released by the Browns, who was a Pro Bowl alternate last year, and many reported him as one of the best kind of coffin corner directional punters in the league. I have to assume that there's some phone calls going on there, or beyond that, some other waived young punter that I just don't have on my radar. And then Reed Ferguson was obviously a lock there. I know you've been a fan of McLaughlin. I know that you and I have been heavily involved in lots of discussions from a punter standpoint. What are your final thoughts on the practice squad, the specialist guys here?
Yeah, I think the reason I wouldn't be shocked to see 2 kickers, and all the comments we're going to see about 2 kickers. That could be a thing, but you'd have to know that the team feels that there's value at kicker, and they're able to move that guy off and then elevate a guy from the practice squad that was on the bubble anyway. So I think that initially kicker could be a place they use, one of those 2 spots we've referred to a couple times here.
Only if that would be a scenario for fans. I don't think there's any realistic opportunity that would go into the season. Sabine was down the path of a trade discussion, but didn't quite get there, that he didn't want to simply expose McLaughlin. That is one where you could play around with it to finalize that trade and then make the roster transaction.
Exactly. And obviously he would know what he was doing, that, we're going to bring up X player from practice squad because X line offensive lineman once that move happens. But we feel we're in good discussions over the next 24 to 48 that will keep him. And I don't think that's far-fetched. I'm not planning on that happening, but if I saw that name, obviously the first thing that's going to jump out is that I think he's done good enough, especially after Minnesota traded a 5th for a kicker. There's some we've seen some funny gifs of kicker misses this preseason and of the Chicago Bears kickers. So, a guy that really didn't hit a 30-yarder in preseason. We saw it in Nuera Field and Vedvik. And then you have Chase McLaughlin, hadn't missed a kick, hit a 54-yarder, pretty much did what he was supposed to do. He will be on a roster to me at some point, if not early, at some point this season. So we'll see what happens there. So, and then the punter, I think it's pretty straightforward that unless they can't find anybody, Bojorquez is going to get replaced here in the next 2 or 3 days, or when they find the guy. But I think there's some names now, and there were some young names that I saw out there too that I'd have to compare them to Bojorquez to see where they would fit in. But I think Britton Colquitt's the first call, and you're saying, hey, you interested in this? If not, okay, we'll move on. They probably already had time to do that with Ryan Allen. Maybe Ryan's waiting for today to evaluate the punter needs. So Brian Allen market could heat up here in the next 24 hours, but I don't think Bojorquez is punting week 1. And if he is, it's not going to be long unless he plays really good quickly.
Yeah, so Gordo's in the chat here joking about maybe we keep him so the Jets can't get him. And I agree. That's my kind of petty. I'm open to that kind of petty. So we'll see where things go here. I think there's a couple things we're going to shake out here. I've refreshed the entire time we've been on here. The official list has not come out yet. So really excited to kind of see where that's going. Oh, Demaryius Thomas just got released by the Patriots.
England, yeah.
So that's an interesting move. Did not expect that one. But everybody's been commenting in the chat, Keith and John, Joe and Ron, everybody, that these are the kind of problems that we've been waiting for. These are the kind of problems that we're wishing for, that, Bean and Shane and Dan Morgan and everybody that's there have put together an outstanding roster, and that we were going to have tough cuts. Now, I didn't expect those tough cuts to be all the players that we're talking about here, and I think there were some interesting choices that were made, but they built a deep, versatile, talented roster that's one of the toughest decisions we've had in a long, long time, and that's a sign of the kind of direction that our franchise is going in. I think it's the reason that we were 4-0 in the preseason. That didn't happen, because of elite talent and amazing coaching. It's because we had better depth than other players. And that's why you saw, pretty convincing wins in several of those, because we simply had better guys at the tail end than what they did. So, give us some final parting thoughts for the folks here. Anything that your final takeaways from today, and some things you might expect over the next couple of days.
They still, with a deep roster, were able to shock us. Nothing was straightforward, from running back to cornerback to a couple position group, maybe offensive line. Maybe we'll see how this all shakes out. Maybe Yarbrough does make the team. We'll see. Maybe they keep it 2 kickers. I don't know at this point. You're going to keep the best 53 because you're deep elsewhere, that, we can hang on to an extra kicker for a little while because we're going to get value out of them. So I don't know. I mean, it is, when you have a deeper roster, it is a problem I'm not used to. You're right. They won 4 preseason games, especially the Detroit and Minnesota game, because they were pretty deep into the second half. They played really well. I thought the 13-team offenses looked better than 13-team offenses generally look here in Buffalo. 13 defense struggled a little bit at times, but a lot of them aren't going to make this roster. So it's a deep team. I'm excited how this all shakes out, but you've already said it, and they just released it all for you, by the way.
Do we have the official list here?
Yeah, we do.
All right. So, the official list is out. The names that we expected, both Christian Wade and David Sills, have been released. So thankfully, I don't have to buy beer for a bajillion people that I made bets with on the internet. We are waiting. Where is the final one? Which offensive lineman made it? So everybody's going to wait in the final. You're going to have to wait along with us here. So Ike Botker did officially make it. We also have, you go ahead and rattle off any other ones that you see here.
McDermott made it, so they did keep 10 there.
Okay. So that was where the other name was. So Eddie Yarbrough has been officially released. Chase McLaughlin has been officially released. Christian Wade.
They went heavy on offensive line.
David Sills. So, although, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where we see one of those waiver names come up, that if we claim someone from another area, it's going to be at the expense of Ike Bacher or Connor McDermott. I think they are the 53rd man, per se. So we know the expected transaction already coming up here. Jason Kroom will go on IR, and we will re-sign Kurt Coleman. I think that you've already heard some of the names out there that are going to be pursued, that obviously there's an interest in bringing back Deion Lacey, an interest in bringing back Ryan Lewis, Cam Lewis. I think that you'll see an interest in potentially converting Terrell Dotson over there onto the practice squad. I think David Sills and Christian Wade are both obvious practice squad additions. Being able to go there, they're going to go after Ray McLeod to be able to get him under the practice squad. I don't think it's crazy that they could try to get Chase McLaughlin, but with the desire for kickers around the league, I'd be surprised if they're able to get him. I think your priority free agent type guys are going to be your Eddie Yarboroughs, are going to be your Captain Munnerlins. Obviously, they're going to try to bring Duke Williams back. That's going to be a hotly contested one for who makes it on the practice squad, with Duke Williams, Nick Easley, David Sills, Ray McLeod, and Cam Phillips all released. I think that 2 or 3 of those, I think 3 tops, is where you're going to see that, but curious to see if they get a sniff anywhere else around the league. So a lot of really surprising things. Glad we were able to get all that news in there for you as it officially came out here. So very excited to be able to kind of talk through this. great opportunity to see where our roster goes and what we're able to turn this into. And thank God we finally have real football next week. So we are now less than a week away from the Bears and the Packers kicking it off on Thursday, and the Bills heading to MetLife Stadium to be able to open it up with the New York Jets. We are going to have a special guest on during the week this week to preview the Jets game on Wednesday night. I'll keep that under wraps now, but definitely a name many of you are familiar with. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. Should be a lot of fun. Any final thoughts for the group here as we got a little extension here at the end?
No, just they went O-line heavy. Like you said, I expect one of McDermott or Butker to not be here very long. Hopefully, 10's deep. They went deep there. So that's an initial reaction. And watch out for Tyler Kroft. Do we know when he might play?
Yeah, everything I've heard is that he's going to be ready relatively soon. And I've heard a lot of people speculate that it was week 2, but that it's sooner than what most expected.
I would think so. You're going to put him on PUP if it's 4 or 5. So maybe it's 1 or 2 weeks. So that'll be interesting to see. They did we're just heavy on O-line. Everything else equaled normal numbers. O-line, tight end, they went 5, I guess, because of crew. But
yeah, technically.
But 4 still, that's still pretty heavy that, they're going to go 4 there, but we'll see what happens going forward. Greg, a lot of moves to still be made in the next 48 hours, 100%.
I agree. Thank you guys. Awesome chat tonight. You guys did a fantastic job being able to keep us up to date while we were going live here. Wanted to get this to you guys as soon as possible. If you have a chance, give us a rating, give us a review. Make sure you check out the Kevin and Jason show. Keep listening to the Cover One Buffalo show. Give us your rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, wherever you're checking us out. Give us a like on YouTube, subscribe, and set the alert when it comes up. We love doing this for you. Just to help us, let a fan know, let a friend know, talk to your neighbor, let them know to check out what we have going on, get a Cover One premium subscription, and we will be able to continue bringing this great content to you. For Kevin Massari, for Greg Tomset, all the rest of the team, Eric, Aaron, everybody over at Cover One, that is it. And we are out.
See you later.